Hi, y'all. Thank you to both those who are attending our proposal writing session, as well as for those who are watching the recording afterwards. My name's Jess or Jessica. Absolutely, very, very valid, Jasmine. And if there's any questions, both for folks in the call or afterwards, and let's say you don't have a chance to ask them now, you're more than welcome to send it to us via Slack, an email. I'll actually be sharing the link to the Slack for those in the call in this, and then for those who aren't in the call, feel free to message me for those links. But this session is kind of a mixture of proposal writing 101 as well as we'll be going through some of the rubric and resources. A little bit of a longer session than some of our other ones, but that being said, the recording will be posted once it's ready, so that way folks are able to access it. Um, this is really your chance to ask questions and to learn some of the tips that maybe either haven't been in the sessions or to clear up any confusion from the website. So this one, in terms of here, um, for myself, I'm tuning in from Mississauga, Ontario, so just outside of Toronto. As mentioned, my name is Jessica, or Jess. The team uses both. I use both. Either one's all good. She, her pronouns. And in terms of what bird resonates with me, I'm just gonna have to move my chat to actually see some of the ones. I'll say probably a five, but in like an excited way. This is because it's like peeking out, seeing, I've seen some of the projects that folks have submitted already. I've also been seeing a lot of great questions via email and Slack, as well as folks from different organizations reaching out and sharing about the event. And so that would probably be mine. So for y'all, you're welcome to drop it in the chat. Shitangshu, I might get you to say yours verbally or put it in the chat if you're either one is all good. So Daniel mentioned from Vancouver, he, him, as well as feeling eight. Eight is very valid, I'll say, especially with this week. But yeah, Shanksha, are you okay if I sorry to like single you out kind of thing?
Sure, yeah, yeah. Well, I'll say I'll go with my birthday, which 5/8, May 8th. And so I am a little bit like I do enjoy swimming. So it has been a little bit of a crazy week, and it's our last week before we get our challenge ongoing. But really excited to see just so yeah, some lots of increased interest in things, and I'm really excited to see all the applications. So yes, a lot of work, a lot of different things that we're managing, but at the same time, I'm really excited in like a very it's just a little bit of chaos, but I'm like an excited chaos way, which is why I put number 8. So yes, so I'll put that, and then I'll say in terms of where I'm tuning from, I'm tuning in from the ancestral territories of the Mi'kmaq in Chibuktuk, which is also known as the Great Harbor, or Halifax, Nova Scotia. And my name is Shatank Roy. I'm very grateful to serve as executive director of the Youth Impact Challenge after being in Justice shoes in the past, and also being a youth innovator in the past. I'm not an alumni of YIC per se, but Jess is actually, which is really exciting. But I've been to challenges like this, and so I know how valuable they can be, and how difficult it is to like start a project as a young innovator. And so it's really nice to be on the other side of things. Pronouns are he, him, his. So yeah, I guess those are my answers to those questions, Jess.
Thank you again. Sorry for calling you out in terms of there, and thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Daniel, for sharing there. So as mentioned a little bit about myself, I'll say is this is the second year I'm coming back as the summer program lead coordinator for our summer challenge. Previously, as Tangsha mentioned, was a YC alumni in for the summer challenge in 2021 and 2022. In terms of some of my stuff outside of kind of work is very much into history, gaming, reading, and music. Haven't had as much time, I'll say, to dive into kind of reading recently, but really, music is something chances are, if you are ever on a call with me, you'll hear me say the words like, hold on, I'm just going to pause or turn down my Spotify, and because it helps me focus in terms of there. Otherwise, I'm a part-time student, currently working on finishing my BA. Um, it's a little bit myself. In terms of some of the other members of the team, there isn't necessarily a slide on this, but you'll see probably throughout the summer challenge, Shu, who introduced himself there, Isha, who's our judge coordinator, so you won't necessarily interact with her as much, but you might see her potentially in areas like the Slack or certain things. Helen, who's our events coordinator, Oliver, who's our education coordinator, so you might see him at some of the mentorship things or some of the workshops, as well as Ada, our marketing coordinator, and also Meg, who's been doing a lot of work around partnerships development with the team. And that's generally, I'll say, the kind of core team. Otherwise, you might see a few folks, for example, like our fantastic folks through Venture for Canada's entrepreneurship program, and some of our Youth Thrive volunteers. So today's agenda is, I'll say, kind of going to look at a few things. So we have really the intros talking about what is a proposal. I'll dive into the rubric a little bit as well as some of our resources, um, past examples there. Really a great chance to ask kind of any questions that pop up, especially around things there. One note is that if you have questions specifically around, I'll say, funding eligibility, these are ones that I would welcome sent via email, as they are typically a more complex question and vary from team to team. And then also talk about what's next. So, talking about some of the possible workshops, application deadline, all those kind of things. So, yeah. So to dive into things, a couple of things to keep in mind as we go throughout this workshop is that there are no bad ideas. Uh, we are all kind of here to learn, and that also means being respectful to one another, both respectful to myself as well as to the other folks in this call, and the other folks who you may interact with throughout our summer challenge, whether it be mentors, judges, organizing team, etc. Be creative. So even as I show examples today with some of the proposals, if you have an idea that is very different than the examples I show, absolutely go with it. Trying new and innovative approaches, and also myself, I'm here to share kind of the knowledge and experience I've gained on both sides, both as one of the organizing team as well as a participant, but also really want to stress that throughout the summer challenge is a chance to share your story and kind of build those connections. So there's a couple slides on this that we're going to dive into a bit further in future workshops, and so you might see me kind of gloss over them because we're going to go over them in more detail later on. And one concept that we kind of like to go through to start things off is the Japanese concept of ikigai. And ikigai is really, if you look at the kind of intersections of here between mission, passion, profession, and vocation, looking at really the reason to live or life purpose. And so for someone like myself, what I get to do at YIC directly kind of correlates with my passion of helping others and sharing resources and helping breaking down some of those barriers. It's also, I'll say, kind of it intersects broadly with what I'm good at in terms of communication as well as some of those other skills. And it is something that folks need, right? Being able to step into that safe space, having someone that's being able to help kind of direct them to resources, and so on, and being in that kind of supportive role. Doesn't affect what I love to do, but there are other passions I have that may be completely different. Those, I'll say, all of these kind of intersect in different ways. And later on in one of our workshops, starting with why and storytelling, we'll go into this a lot more. So I'm not going to go over it in too detail because I don't want to steal Shang-Chi's thunder for that workshop. But really, folks, as you look both in the summer challenge and beyond, is really looking at this concept. Something that you love to do can very much kind of intersect with something the world needs, what you're good at, as well as potentially do for a vocation or profession, even things like hobbies and so on. So this is something I encourage y'all to consider when you're writing your proposals as well as beyond our summer challenge. And so one of the things here is, again, when reflecting where you spend your efforts, always starting with why. There's a video that is on the screen here that I'm actually going to kind of not show this video because this is one we will show later on at the Starting with Why workshop. Super awesome video by Simon Sinek. Actually been watching a few of his videos lately on his most recent book. And definitely encourage folks to take a look at some of these as well as other kind of videos like this as you look to write your proposal and your innovation journey. Um, but he really dives into the concept of kind of the golden circle. And so similar to when we looked at the concept of ikigai, right, of life purpose and kind of reason to live is looking at, why do you do what you do? What's the purpose? How do you do what you do? And then essentially, what do you do? In the video, he goes into kind of a few different concepts of popular brands and how they look to things in marketing. But I think beyond that, really looking at, as you hear me go through the rubric in a little bit, how this kind of intersects with not just elements of our summer challenge, but your innovation or your project, really looking at, beyond what you're doing is why are you doing it? What potentially are the motivations, purpose, the things that lie behind it, looking at lived experience, and so on. And so I don't want to kind of get ahead of myself here, so I'm going to purposely stop myself on this slide. But again, really thinking how does this apply to your idea, as well as your project in general, or even, as we mentioned, beyond YIC. Um, really looking at as well as how does this apply to your proposal. So how do you communicate your why to, not just the organizing team, but to the judges who may have never heard about your project before? How do you communicate, I can think of some projects participated in the past, like years of passion and work and that lived experience. How do you communicate how much you care to the judges? 3 pages is not a lot of space, we recognize. I know even as Shangshu can attest to, I was reviewing a proposal a couple weeks ago in relation to one of our things that we were helping present to the board, and that proposal was, I believe, 10 pages. And even then, there was so many things that didn't get the chance to kind of make it into the proposal. Really looking at, I'll say the one thing here uh, that folks will focus so much on it has to hit the 3 pages. I have to hit the 3 pages. Read your proposal, look at it, see are there things, let's say if it's longer than 3 pages that you can take out, are there things that are missing? So are you missing your why? Are you kind of communicating your passion and things like that? So really thinking of how these concepts of Ikigai and the Golden Circle apply to your proposal. In terms of kind of a compare and contrast, uh, we have a couple of different examples, I'll say, for this. Before we dive into examples, there's a document that I want to kind of share with you folks, and that's this document here. Can folks see the from idea to concept doc on my screen? Awesome. Uh, so this is a document that if you were on our website kind of a couple weeks ago, you would have saw this look a little bit different. One of our staff, Helen, has gone through and I'll say kind of revitalized it in a way using some of the new information. So I will zoom in if I can find the thing. I'll zoom in a little bit potentially, but it may end up just going like this. There we go. So I'll zoom in a little bit. So in this document, it's essentially useful to get an idea of how to develop your proposal to submit as a document. But it also contains the link to our info session recording. I know the info session recording now is up on YouTube, and so either that link or the YouTube link will lead you to the same session. But it really dives into breaking down not just the rubric, but some of the content based on past proposals. So looking at things like, when you're trying to illustrate the problem that your project is trying to address, when does the problem happen and why should other people care about it? Looking at things like, going into idea and the current need or market, right? Are there already orgs trying to fix this problem? But beyond competition, are there places you could potentially build partnerships with? Here at YC, I know for our Climate Change Makers Challenge, we collaborate with an awesome organization called One for Earth, and so there's skills and strengths that both organizations bring to the table in terms of partnerships. So rather than looking at it strictly like a competition, it's how can you build those partnerships and work with other organizations? It goes into a little bit of one of the areas I'll say that folks tend to leave out of their proposal is talking about their team. So looking at, diversity of backgrounds and thoughts, as well as, what skills and qualifications does your team have? Beyond that, what are the skills you're potentially lacking and how you might address those? And so I'll say I won't read through kind of word by word on this document as it is quite detailed, but it also goes into the application questions you might see on the form in terms of there. Um, I'll be sharing the link I'll share it in the chat for y'all, Daniel, and then for folks who are unable to attend, it'll be in our Slack channel afterwards. So I'm just going to kind of drop the link there. In terms of things, oh, I closed the chat right there. Sorry, y'all. In terms of, again, this document itself, it really goes into, this is more so the application question guidance. And then as you kind of go down, you'll see very similar, if not the same language to our summer challenge form. In this document, on the left for document tabs, you'll see there's an updated English version and an updated French version. Folks are more than welcome to use whichever version is most comfortable with them, as well as the info session link here is bilingual, so it was run both in English and French on July 8th. This is really a document I recommend you take a look with or a look at to get potentially an idea of what you need to develop your proposal. It is linked on the website as well, and again, it will be shared in the Slack there. But huge shout out to Helen for going through and kind of doing this document. One of the things you'll also find, I'll be sharing it both in our Slack as well as um, for folks kind of in the chat afterwards. You'll see this document here. So we've gone through and made a PDF version of the application form that folks can look at as they potentially do some of the planning before filling out the Google form. I just want to reiterate that the main form you should be filling out is the Google form. If you need an accommodation, please reach out to us kind of sooner rather than later, especially around the application form. Generally, it's pretty straightforward. It doesn't really, it says, around 15 minutes, but we've made this version so that way even, let's say, as you folks are going through and trying to plan out, like, what do I write for my application, you can print this out and do jot notes or highlight things. And so it's a great example of being able to do some of that planning. It again is a PDF version of all of the questions you'll find on the application form. The formatting just looks a little bit different. And so this will be a document that I kind of share with everyone afterwards, as well as for folks in the Slack. And so, like I said, it goes through all of the things in our application form, but there's also this as well um, in terms of kind of other things. So this is kind of two documents that I recommend folks look at. Wanted to show these before we dive into kind of the two examples. And so for the two examples we're going to show, we've purposely picked two examples that are a little bit different from each other. Both of these submissions scored really well last year in terms of kind of projects, and they both do. I will say they both do things in different ways, but to a high degree of quality. And so the first proposal was essentially Shelf Smart. So Shelf Smart is or was an AI-driven solution for helping reduce food waste. This proposal is exactly 3 pages, from what I remember from talking to the team. Again, both of these examples will also be linked with those resources. For folks in the call, I'll be linking them kind of at the end. For folks afterwards, they'll be linked in our Slack. And one thing I want to point out that the proposal does here is they have headers kind of for each thing. You don't necessarily have to have headers for each kind of section. It is very much up to you, but the way they did it is really kind of breaking down the different sections. In their proposal, one thing I think is kind of neat is I'll zoom in a little bit as well, is they have kind of a document on the phases of their project. So looking at the development phase, control phase, and marketing phase, some of the different updates here. And so beyond just having text, right, it's how do we convey some of this information that might take potentially a page in itself. And this allows the team to kind of expand upon there. They also spend, I'll say, a good portion of a page going into the founding team. So not just the skills, that we mentioned, like talking about the skills and experience and qualifications of the team, but also some of their challenges and struggles that they've faced and how they're looking to address them. Um, I think, and that's one that folks typically don't talk about a lot because there is a fear of, if I admit I'm not good at something, right, then am I going to be scored lower? The matter of things is the judges appreciate the fact that teams do look at things, recognize like not not everyone, necessarily has the same set of skills, coming into the summer challenge. When I was coming into the first summer challenge, I think if I remember correctly, second or third year of university, maybe had done 1 year of kind of HR related things, but was super passionate and willing, to spend time and do whatever I could to learn those skills. Flash forward to now where being able to do workshops like this and review some of the awesome projects that folks are going through. Um, I'll say the one thing about the Shelf Smart proposal, um, again, that we normally look at in this section is kind of the compare and contrast, is it is a lot of text and it goes through things, in a great amount of detail, but it doesn't necessarily illustrate potentially the concept or some of the things there. It's very stat based in certain parts, as well as it goes, like you said, it spends potentially like almost half a page talking about the founding team, but is there a way to kind of combine this? Again, normally the portion we do for this is kind of a compare and contrast with getting folks' thoughts on here. Does anyone have any initial thoughts from, I'll say, looking at the Shelf Smart proposal that they potentially want to share either in the chat or verbally? And again, it's okay if folks don't have any. Yep, thanks. You go ahead.
Yeah, I think in terms of content, it's really good. Like it has like a lot of the key things that are needed, and one of the things that I really like is it really, especially in the beginning, it brings an element of story into it. Like it's stats plus story, so it's like it has some like really key piece of data, but then it's also like. It brings in, it's not just like here's information, it kind of weaves it into a nice kind of compelling piece. I will say it doesn't really appeal to me from a visual perspective much as some of the other things, some of the other proposals. Like it is pretty much just text. And I mean, like, yes, it does work, but I think like there can be a bit more strategic use of like some graphics and things, especially I mean knowing Shelf Smart and what the project was about. Like there's some really cool technology behind it. I remember the video was really good in terms of like engaging with just kind of showing how the thing works. So I think there is an opportunity to improve it, but I will say, like in terms of the content, some of the storytelling itself and writing itself is actually very good. So it's a really good writing. It could be kind of complemented with some strong.
Thanks. I think your mic had cut you off in the last little bit there.
Oh yeah, I was just kind of summarizing. Can you hear me now? Just
Yep, you're good. It was just the last couple words.
yeah, I was just saying, like, I think my overall thought would be some really strong writing, especially when you read it and like the way they like have a strong story. But it could have been complemented with a better use of graphical elements, as is like, let's say, with the other proposal and whatnot. So yeah, so I think those are my notes. So real good
And
overall, but points
and
are
thank
included.
you thank you for sharing those. Um, Absolutely, I think there is, and we see proposals that use sometimes are very kind of image and graphic based with less text. We see ones that are very text based. We see, and the one thing, folks, if again as a tip is please we some very rare cases when people hear the 3 page limit, they'll put like really small text. Um, Please make sure your text is kind of readable. So one of the things there. So in terms of uh, your message there, Daniel, so you said you're curious that it looks like Shelf Smart is aiming to benefit a very big audience. Is this the expectations for projects? If projects want to benefit a particular community, be seen as less competitive compared to projects with bigger scale and impact? I'll say we get a variety of projects through the summer challenge, and in terms of things, it's being able to illustrate, we said that passion as well as I'll say the passion, the purpose, and really diving into the different elements of our rubric. And so, in terms of being seen as less competitive, I'll say no. In terms of compared to project bigger scales, I've seen projects who our community-based projects, go on to do really well in the summer challenge. I can recall one of our teams a couple of years ago that was looking to do mental health neurodivergence workshops. And overall, they'd mentioned that like, hey, we'd run this workshop in potentially our community. Ideally, in an ideal world, we'd love to expand it, but mainly we're focusing on our community. Still did really well, even projects that potentially are still in the maybe ideation phase. I know there were a couple teams, correct me if I'm wrong, Shanice, I remember two teams that kind of developed their idea during the couple days before the summer challenge and then spent a good part of the summer challenge kind of like working on the idea um, in there. And yeah, is there anything I missed, Shangshu, in terms of this question?
Got stuck there. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yep, we can hear
Okay.
you.
Yeah, let's sit down. That's such a good question. And yeah, exactly what Jess said. The number of teams where we have to sit them down and be like, you are being too broad is crazy. So, Daniel, not only will I say that it doesn't make it less competitive, I'll say it actually makes you more competitive when you show a focused approach where you actually know your thing. Even the winning project was looking at a very specific part of Cuba where we're going to implement their project. I remember having conversations with them specifically about they were trying to expand in a way that was like a little bit too it wasn't focused enough, right? Because it was like, hey, you know what, like figure out your little section of Cuba where you've already done some really good work and then expand slowly from there. In your project implementation plan you can have that, hey, you know what, we're going to scale this way. But I would say actually, if anything, our projects which tend to be more successful are the ones which show focus implementation. So for example, what would make Shelf Smart more competitive, and they did well, it would have been for them to say, and I think they probably did this in the end. I have to, it probably, as we went through rounds of mentorship and whatnot, like I'm going to execute this in this particular store in my area, and then I'm going to expand the technology to other stores, right? Like that, or to other stores in Ontario, and then I'm going to expand it to other stores across Canada. So like. Showing more focus is very valuable. Oftentimes, we have too many projects where like we're going to change the world tomorrow, as opposed to here's a realistic implementation of how I'm going to get from A to Z, and there's going to be I'm going to start with and not the other way around. So start local. What's the expression, Jess? Is think act local, think global. Is that right?
I think something like that, but very
Yeah.
much absolutely as you said, Shangshu, like is folks, especially even like myself. I remember when I was first participating in YC Summer Challenge. If I remember correctly, our project was like we want to do all across Canada in both English and French, and we want to do all these amazing things. And although those are great ideas, when we actually went and looked at the execution, it is better to start small, to think local, think of how also like each community and demographic is very different. The project I originally entered with YSC was with the team was trying to make a mental health app for teachers, but teaching looks very different in one from one classroom to another. Every teacher is different. Every school board is different, and so really starting, like Shangsha said, starting local, thinking on that smaller scale, um, and you can absolutely go into and say like down maybe 5 years down the road, right, this is what we want to do, but really starting with that kind of, I'll say, more so achievable kind of goals there. um, as per the example you mentioned, Shangshu, I think this is the one you were talking about, the waves of change, and so it kind of blends in well is I'll say waves of change is more kind of graphic based, and so one of the things y'all notice in this example is it's not just, very text-based, but goes into both different pictures and examples, as well as rather than doing the kind of bolded headers, they choose to do it on the side. Um, and is still very text, but they also link their website and Instagram in here. They spent, I know, their last page was all around both the founding team as well as the kind of implementation plan. And so, as compared to Shelf Smart, they kind of broke it down in terms of like, here's the different phases, ideally, as well as impact metrics. They also went into potential barriers, talking about one of the very real things, which is like res ensuring resilience for, kind of student team during exam seasons and turnover. Um, Even in their founding team, they go into, I'll say waves of change more so goes into strengths. And so it doesn't necessarily go into weaknesses as much. But you can see that in this example, um, there is a lot of text. I'll say the one thing here is they really, I'll say, push the margins as far as they can go. Um, but it doesn't look kind of cramped together. The text is still very readable. This isn't zoomed in. This is, on 100%. And so you can see that they also go in to, here's our target. Here's the actual like potential cost of what this is going to take. And so, showing that they have not just thought about implementation, but actually kind of gone into and said, hey, this from what we've done so far, this is going to be the cost. Um, and I'll say the kind of thing they also do well is really going into the story part, as Tangshu initially mentioned. So talking about, the problem, really kind of drawing folks in, and then explaining, hey, here's how we plan to potentially go about addressing this problem. Um, Shinichi, I'll say when reviewing the proposals last year, what would you say would be constructives for this proposal? We talked a lot about like the things they do well and similar to Shelf Smart, but what were the things when even reviewing this or talking to the team that you might have noticed kind of things? Slash your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I'll reflect on my remembering just us advising them we were prepping them for the grand finals. I remember they had a project which had I think it relates to what I shared before. Like it had both an element in a particular locality in Cuba, plus this thing in Canada, plus like it was a lot of different things. All right, and one of the challenges was, hey, you know what? Look, it's okay for you to have some different elements, but like present a more focused approach. And I think so. That's one. I'll say the proposal itself. I do like the way they've integrated some different elements together. And like I think a really nice way of strategically using every space, every little space you have, to use it strategically, right? So yes, the margins are right, and not in a way too where it's like I can't even read the proposal, which sometimes does happen too. So like be careful when people go the other way. I'll say, yeah, some really really well done. They had some really good research backed up with stories. Um, Showed the impact very well. So yeah, I think I believe they were our winners, and yeah, they did quite well. And honestly, and by the way, one thing I will say, no, none of them came in perfect. None of them even came out perfect. Right? There was a lot of one great things about YIC that I hope you folks take advantage of is mentorship office hours. Jess has office hours, I believe, on Sunday. So anyone on your recording too, please check those out and like book some time because like that can be really helpful for you to help get like one-on-one support. So there was a lot of work that we did at both those teams and really a lot of the teams where to just help guide them to the point where you know what they do well at the end. So I think lots of really really good work and just a kudos to the team too. Like at the end of the day, you know we might give a little bit of guidance, but this is really their brilliance and their efforts and their hard work that gets them yeah all the wonderful fruits of their labor. So yeah, so I guess just those would be my notes.
And thank you so much. Thanks for mentioning even office hours and some of the supports like mentorship as well. I want to say, folks, well, sometimes what happens is projects that don't make it through to round two, people often say like, oh, well, I can't participate in anything for the summer challenge. In fact, we design a few of our workshops each round for everyone to participate and also for folks to participate, even if, let's say, they didn't get the chance to submit a proposal. Pop-up mentorship usually is open to kind of all of our participants. Office hours, I'm also more than happy to, as Shangsha mentioned, like if any questions kind of come in on Sunday, to have those conversations around there. I remember I spent an office hours call with a participant last year. They had essentially two versions of the proposal, and they had said like, hey, I understand that you can't necessarily coach me in how to write my proposal, but which one do you think does a better job in terms of like aesthetically, like showed me two versions. And I said to them, I said, the one of the issues you might run into the second one is similar to one of the things we talked about waves of change is, the margins are very small. It's a careful line between how do you fit the information that you're trying to do, but also not overwhelming folks, making sure that it's still, readable. We have had proposals that have come in, and I think size 8 font, if I remember correctly, and it was very hard to read. And so we ended up going back to those folks and saying, like, hey, as much as we appreciate like the amount of detail, the proposal as itself right now, someone needs to massively zoom in to read, which can be hard for our judges. Also, one of the questions that we will get from folks is, do I need to include a references page? And I'll say a references page, it's up to you whether to include. Uh, it can be outside of the 3 pages. However, I do want to stress that reference pages should, if you are using it as an additional page, should just be references. There should not be additional content. For example, if I go back to ShelfSmart and we look down here, if ShelfSmart had then had another page that was a reference page, but the reference page had a paragraph on, each of the team members, then we'd go back to them and say, hey, it is over 3 pages. That being said, if it can be under 3 pages, we do typically recommend folks do at least 2 pages, making sure again that you're maximizing the amount you have to kind of get the info. Uh, Proposal can also be submitted in English or French, and so in terms of for round one. But really, folks, I encourage you to take a look at not just these, but also some of the examples you'll see of projects on our website here. If I go into some of the page, you'll see some of the past projects. And similar to one of the things that Shang mentioned, some of these projects didn't start out like completely finished before they came to YIC. Some folks have come in with, hey, I have an idea of here's something I want to do. And I roughly, kind of like maybe have the start of a plan. And so we get projects all across, I'll say, different kind of areas from nonprofits to for-profits to community projects, as well as projects from different kind of places and folks' innovation journeys. And so really take a look at some of these, as well as our Instagram also has some of the different projects from there. And I want to say we get projects of one from all across Canada as well. So again, really take a look at, I'll share the relevant links both in Slack as well as after the presentation to some of these resources. But the website is there for you absolutely to take a look at some of the things here. But yeah, so kind of diving into a bit of the back to the presentation is we talked about kind of comparing and contrasting. And so one of the things here is the review of the rubric. And I'll say the benefit of being on this call is you get to see the rubric firsthand before folks see the recording. And so the rubric is here. Again, this will also be something that's accessible not just in the links here, but we are currently finalizing a participant resources package that has access to some of these documents as folks go throughout the summer challenge. You'll see that this rubric is one, if like laid out in a variety of ways, and there are a couple things that are more so relevant to the judges. And so I'll say the bottom thing here for feedback, don't worry about that. That is something the judges will do for teams, and I'll go over that in a little bit. But we talked a little bit as through the examples, right? Some of the things that those projects did well. So in terms of both projects, as we look at the rubric, right, problem identification. So have you established the scale, complexity, and the importance of your problem? Is there potentially inclusion of different research methods, personal kind of accounts of lived experience, even things like interviews, surveys, or more? Sometimes when folks think of surveys, they are like, oh, it has to be hundreds of people. You could go to your neighbors or your school, or even I've seen folks do it on a group chat in Discord, saying like, hey, would you be, how do y'all feel about this thing? I'm working on this project. And really looking at how lived experience is kind of there. We saw from Waves of Change, right? The project lead as well as the team going into, this is, our story, right? That we're very much seeing like firsthand from the work we're doing, the volunteering we're doing, how this problem affects not just us, but, globally. The photos on the Shelf Smart, or not on the Shelf Smart proposal, on the Waves of Change proposal, there's actually a note from the team that says, all photos were taken by the co-president of the team in Cuba. And so that's how they choose to incorporate not just the story, but going beyond, some of the things there. I'll say looking at one of the next things is quality of innovation. And so is the proposed solution slash idea innovative, exciting, and new in solving a unique problem? So is there strong analysis of other solutions and also a clear sense of why the idea could introduce potentially a unique perspective or dimension to address the problem? Is there also a willingness to build on the work of others before them or partners? One of the things you heard me mention was about the partner, the kind of collaboration that we do for our Climate Change Makers Challenge, right? And so that's working with other works and building on some of that work that organizations have done to kind of address problems. I'll say in the proposal itself is again, how do you really communicate to the judges that, this is the solution I have. Here's how it's different from other ones, but also here's how I kind of want to learn from the knowledge in other organizations. I've seen this in projects where people have even said like, hey, I recognize that the solution has been proposed before in this other context, but I'm going to use the research gained there by reaching out to the team for feedback and for, to hear some of the struggles they've gone through with the idea to kind of incorporate that and build upon when looking at how to kind of reiterate on their project. Um, we look at I'll say, potential for environmental or social impact. And so looking at, what is the impact of your project, including some of as Shangsha mentioned, right, looking at the realistic scope and potential scale of the project, starting local, thinking local, and how, do you plan to kind of measure the impact? And there's many different ways in terms of impact measuring and things out there, many different ways of research and also like ways of articulating, your idea. It could be something as, hey, we have this graphic that goes through what our problem is, what we plan to do, but in the paragraph next to it, I'm going to dive into how we plan to do like the implementation plan. Um, One of the things is kind of a clear strategy of implementation, as well as one of the things the judges will look at is a project's viability for execution, as well as do you have a sense of how your project may grow and develop with time? We talked about shelf smart, right? Wanting to, aim to have this, like talking about, the global kind of CO2 emissions, as well as, saying that we want to incorporate this in a big area. But when we look at the rubric, it's clear strategy on how to measure it, as well as the implementation plan. One of the things is what are the barriers? And so I know in the Shelf Smart one, they go into some of the things that they're doing, as well as kind of the global projection, as well as like some of the statistics there. But really diving into, what are what are the issues potentially that you're facing when doing the project? And for some folks, this will be things that you may have not have thought of yet. Maybe it's something you're diving into the first time. Maybe you're coming in similar to when I was doing my first project, right? I know I want to participate. We have this general idea. We've thought about it in a couple meetings. We're still working things out. Um, your project will adapt and change over time as well. And so, with your own skills, experiences, lived experiences, and challenges, your project will adapt. What you potentially submit, now may not be necessarily what you choose to do the exact same in the future. I know there are projects that have submitted for multiple years, and so sometimes a challenge there is how do I build upon the knowledge and feedback I've gained? And sometimes those projects look very different the second time, I'll say. We see kind of how they've built upon some of the feedback and challenges. Um, Kind of the last I'll say of the overall categories is you heard me mention this a bunch of times earlier, but the strength of the founding team. And so does the team display skills and experience that are suited to the project? We talked about how lived experience can be just as valuable as professional experience, as well as the synergy among the team. Are folks collaborating and helping out in different aspects of the projects? is there a plan to address some of the gaps in knowledge as well? One of the things when we've had sometimes one-on-one conversations with folks, and they'll say is, I'm not the most skilled in, accounting. And for us, it's okay. Well, what is an idea you have to potentially kind of gain that knowledge? And they'll say, I've seen this course I've been wanting to take. It's a free course on YouTube I've seen, or I've seen like, I remember talking to someone about they were super interested in science but didn't have necessarily that knowledge. And they said, but, I remember these crash course videos and I want to gain that kind of beginner knowledge and intro knowledge of there. And so it's looking at, how can you potentially rectify some of the lack in key perspectives or skills? This could also be, let's say if you're like, hey, I'm passionate about this issue, but it isn't one I've directly faced, is talking to members of your community, talking to sometimes I've seen folks talk to their neighbors or classmates, right, about hey, this isn't something I faced, but a friend of mine has been going through this experience. And so talking to them and looking at, one of the ways to, if you say, for example, like, hey, I lack lived experience, is bringing someone on the team, even in an advisor role, to share kind of their experience and lived experience, to get their thoughts through that kind of user research side. The one thing I'll say before I kind of give folks a chance to ask questions as well as if there's anything that's been missed is kind of the overall impressions. And so I think the rubric, in terms of the wording, captures this in an excellent way and says not everything can be captured in rubrics. Even we recognize in this rubric, right, there are things that aren't here that may be directly relevant to your project, your proposal, or even your team. Sometimes one of the things we'll say to judges is a project may not necessarily score as high in, let's say, implementation plan, but does the team bring that passion? Do they have a compelling story? Have they overcome even barriers to submit their YIC application? Um, does the proposal, is the proposal well presented in terms of high quality? Or even looking at things talked about like aesthetics, it doesn't have to be the most fantastic graphic design kind of proposal, but if that passion is there, and so judges do have the discretion to award a few points on this for projects, and this is overall something we consider when doing our scoring for round one. One of the things we also look at is, and you'll hear us share a little bit kind of in next week or so, is the feedback from the judges. So we've had feedback sometimes that from the judges have said like, hey, maybe there was like the text was too small in a part, but when they looked at it, they can see like this team is so passionate. Um, it's just maybe sometimes an error. And so when you're making your proposal is generally the thing I say to folks is get someone to take a look at your proposal who's never seen it before, whether that's a friend, classmate, partner, um, parent, etc., um, and see sometimes what are the feedback that they have. Looking at, again, one of the things if I can really kind of hammer home folks is talking about your story and sharing your why and that passion. I've seen so many projects that will focus so heavily on the statistics side of things, and why they're the best team for the job, that they don't talk about their story and really why they're even passionate about the project, and things. Um, Tangshu, I apologize for kind of calling you out again in terms of this, but I really want to touch on, is there anything that you, because I know you've been on both sides, uh, you've been you've in the past, you've helped folks in kind of the mentor calls, you've been in the kind of a baseline judge role of judging some of the proposals, as well as in that kind of judge coordination role. Is there anything that you really want to kind of hammer home that folks should consider when looking at the rubric?
For sure. Hey, I'll turn my camera on for a little bit. So hello, folks. I'm just on a walk here. I'll highlight three things. First of all, Jess really well said on all fronts. One is that what Jess said about story, it can't highlight that even further. One specific thing we will share as well is sometimes we do see people trying to squeeze every element of your rubric into the proposal. And that doesn't always go well, right? Because then what ends up happening is You compromise. So sometimes the overall impression score then gets lower because you're compromising really like a well flowing proposal because you want to fit this and this and this. I will say that what once you do have your rubric developed, like just said, get other people to view it and view it yourself. Be your biggest critic. Give it yourself a read. Look at your rubric and almost grade yourself. Be like, okay, you know what? We're touching on this, this, this. We're not touching on this, this, this. Maybe we need to adapt it. But again, don't like try and fit everything into the point where it's yeah, we don't see a human anymore. It's just like stats and it's just like bullet points, and it's like, okay, where's the actual flow here? That's one. Number two, market research. We'll be sharing a workshop in a little bit around ideation and market research. There'll be recording of that. They'll I really encourage you folks to have a look at that workshop. We'll probably be sending this over on our mailing list, by the way. So I'm going to encourage you folks to please join our mailing list in case you want that. Possibly link it in different places on our probably our social media and link tree as well. So one thing I'm going to really highlight here is what I mean by market or stakeholder research. Talk to real people. Oftentimes, what we see is people they create these projects but haven't actually talked to the people they want to impact. And it's like, hey, you know what? I'm creating. I'm presuming I know someone else's problems versus, hey, I've actually tried to understand it. Or even if it is your problem, can you validate your experience with the experience of others? And let us say, for example, you're highlighting a specific challenge you have as an LGBTQI plus youth. Your experience may be unique, or your experience might be shared by a large part of the community. And so, like, you think about how do we actually do the research we need to do where you talk to real people? If there's something I might say to highlight in the next couple of days, it is to it is such a telling thing when people validate their proposals with just like stats from the internet. And a lot of people will do that. That's probably standard. But what really can set someone apart is, I didn't just do that. I actually talked to an actual person and my project has merit. So and this is why, right? These are people I've talked to. I also have some secondary research to back up my thing. These are some things we talked about in the ideation workshop. But just want to really highlight that as well, because especially to make your proposal stand out. And the last thing I'm going to say is supports. We talked about it a little bit here. I think kudos to you folks for being on this call, even more so because you're in this call when it's been challenging for you to participate fully in other ways. But like there, I can tell you, we have done research on people who attend workshops versus how well they did. It's so clear, okay? Like people like you folks are. I'm not gonna say you have no inherent advantage in terms of grading, but the fact that you have this information does make you more likely to do well. If you come to an office hour session, that will make it more likely that you do well. If you actually check out our ideation workshop, you know what, those workshops, they're not that they do have, we believe, some a lot of value, and that's the feedback we've received as well. And so I really encourage you folks to take advantage of the supports that you have, both within your community, but in particular at YIC, we know that not everyone has the same level of support. There's a lot of supports we are providing, and use those to your advantage, and really take advantage of those. There are opportunities for one-on-one support through mentorship, office hours. Use those. Check out the workshops, all of those things. All right. The info session recording is also going to be very valuable. So please check some of that out. That's on our Instagram through our link tree. So that would be my third thing, is just use the supports you have. There has been we've done stats on it, and it's like night and day how people who use our supports do at YC versus the ones who don't. And so it's not even that they have an inherent like grading advantage. It's just their actual proposal ends up being at a higher quality. So yeah, that would be my last note. So yeah, those would be my things. Jess, let me know if there's anything else you want me to touch on.
You're all good, thanks you. So one of the things I was pulling up, folks, is the office hours. So this is found through our website. When you go to our website in the about section, you'll see there's like office hours with our staff. Make sure for the summer challenge that you're clicking on myself for directly in terms of questions here. I'll say right now I need to update it with kind of availability, but there is availability listed for Monday. So come Monday, if there are questions that you have, you're more than welcome to kind of book a call. I'll also make sure that there is availability, again, as you mentioned, for Sunday. But we also have our Slack channel. There's an Ask an Organizer channel that sometimes folks don't tend to use until, I'll say, the day before. We also have our email, and I know some folks have reached out with questions there. And I'll say, very upfront, sometimes it takes us a little bit to reply to some of those questions because, within those last couple of days, however, we do our best to kind of get to them um, on our end. But if there are questions, please do reach out and please do take us up on some of those supports. Yeah, as Shneisha mentioned, is join our Slack too. Y'all, I'll make sure that kind of in a few minutes to share the link to our Slack there. But again, office hours are there, mentorship throughout the summer challenge, various capacities. Slack is also the place we tend to announce workshops, announcements, mentorship, things like that. So that's really the place you want to be. Sometimes it is quieter. Sometimes there's a lot of pings, and so again, we recommend that you kind of join there in terms of things. Our website also has a lot of good information. One of the documents that you saw me share earlier around that application guidance, right? There's the link to Slack. Soon there'll be the participant resource package and a lot of things there. But yeah, so in terms of kind of I'll touch on a few kind of final things, folks. So I'm going to go back to this slide, which is just a slide that says thank you. But I'm going to full screen it here. Is a couple things to note as we go forward. So one, please join the Slack if you haven't had the chance already. I'll be dropping the link in there momentarily. This is where we, again, post a lot of those announcements as well as a way to sometimes get a quicker response from us than by email. The one thing I do want to stress is uh, sometimes folks get so excited to hear the results that they like to message us a lot and say, hey, I know the announcement date was this date. Is please give the organizing team a little bit of patience to review submissions as well as to kind of get results out. All of those announcements will be communicated as folks are able to. Sometimes there are life situations that pop up, right? And that sometimes makes us, we plan for a date and maybe something pops up that makes it be the day after. In terms of the deadline, so as we mentioned, the deadline is July 20th at 11:59 Pacific time. So for our folks in Eastern time, that would mean 3 a.m. Now, I do want to highlight if you message me with a question at 2:55 a.m. in the morning on Tuesday, I am less likely to respond than if you message me during the afternoon on Monday. And this is because we do have our kind of working hours and we do our best to make sure that there is that time of folks with questions. But again, the organizing team does need sleep as well. So if you have those questions sooner rather than later, one of the things that Shang and I mentioned is office hours. Absolutely booking those. If tonight after this call you're like, hey, I know for sure I want office hours, and I know the link isn't updated, but I'd love to, book some office hours, just send me an email. I'm more than happy to kind of schedule there. And if there are times that do not work, and you're like, hey, let's say I work. I know we had a participant before who worked kind of during the day, and the latest they were able to have a call was 9 p.m. And so we ended up having kind of a special office hours later on to accommodate their schedule. But that is something, again, that we would need to know sooner rather than later. Really take a look at the rubric, folks, some of those past examples and resources. If there's anything I can't stress enough is please don't forget to share your story and how passionate you are in your proposals. And this goes beyond, the proposal to things in general is regardless of where things go at the summer challenge, if it's a project or an idea that you are passionate about, is continue going with it. Sometimes folks will see the results at YIC as an indicator of if they should or shouldn't continue with their project. I'll say, very upfront that the first year I participated in YSC, I don't think we did as well as we did the second year. And the team, did have a conversation around, is this what we want to keep doing? But ultimately, the passion and kind of that desire for to make change and to make an impact, and really kind of, regardless of where things going, is reach out to us. And if it's a project you're um, looking for supports in terms of like, hey, are there any resources that you can connect me to around proposal writing or different workshops? Is just reach out to us. Use those again. Use these support systems. Um, I also want to stress that when you reach out with a question, you are not a bother in any way. We are happy to answer questions. I actually get kind of overjoyed a little bit when folks reach out asking questions and booking office hours because I love just having those one-on-one conversations, being able to dive into things. So yeah, so that in terms of our proposal writing workshop, will be in terms of things. For folks on the call, I'm going to share the link to the Slack momentarily. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop the recording. So for folks watching this recording, thank you so much, and I hope you all have a great night. I'm just going to stop the recording on